Welcome back. So, okay, so your point is that that we mustn't confuse the two. The proposition being put is that you're awfully keen to get rid of these CPAs.
Judge, in fact, it's the opposite is true. What we are doing is we are amending the Communal Property Associations Act by strengthening the issues of accountability and transparency in the manner in which the communal property associations work. We are strengthening issues of governance so that it's the communities that will take decisions on how their land is being dealt with.
But can I just ask you this? When you say communities, what do you mean? Through the traditional leader?
There are not all communities in our country have traditional leaders. Traditional leadership is an institution recognized by the Constitution and, of course, subject to the provisions of the Constitution. And it is a structure that many people in our country are used to. So when CPAs have to be created in order to receive land, the people have said to us that they get confused by the imposition of this additional structure. So what we are doing, what we are saying now is that we're going to leave it up to the community to decide whether they would want to own land, hold land, manage land through a communal property association or through a traditional council.
All right. So won't the chiefs want to control the process?
Not necessarily.
Why? That's traditionally the case, isn't it?
No, it is not. We chiefs rule, traditional leaders rule by consensus. There is no...
Really?
Yes. The traditional leader does his work in council. That's the reality of the situation. We work
and
with
who
these
is the
people.
council?
It's the members that are nominated, 60% nominated by the traditional leader, 40% elected by the community.
Yeah.
In terms
Now,
of
why?
the law.
Yeah, and certainly these traditional leaders, for example, it's suggested in articles I've read who might have been complicit in forced removals, they're going to profit from this too?
No, the traditional leaders, as my colleague has rightfully said, are recognized in terms of Chapter 12 of the Constitution.
I accept that, but the question
But
is...
you are not going to penalize them for being in a situation where they had to support the apartheid policies. Are you going to do that? How many people in South Africa were complicit with the apartheid state, but still...
Well, I wouldn't be so keen to reward them, would you?
I would.
Really? You want to
Yes.
reward people for having been complicit in forced removals, which created the very problem in the first place,
But
which we're now trying to resolve?
That was a minority of cases, not all of them.
Okay.
A lot of them...
I know, but I'm just saying that there are some cases like that. But what perhaps a much more important point for me
Yes.
is the question of who, at the end of the day, determines the form in which the land will be given back. It will be the people who will decide whether they want to have a communal property association or whether it should be the traditional chief. Who determines that?
It is the people. In traditional community areas,
Yes.
under the leadership of a traditional leader, I don't see any community opting for something else because the institution is embedded in the political,
There's
social...
a huge amount of controversy about that.
It's
Well,
an
let's take
empirical
whether
question.
Yes, it is an empirical question,
Yes.
and I'm interested in you suggesting that in fact that the two can be conflated, that the traditional chiefs ultimately represent the Volksgeist, the will of the people,
Yes.
and that therefore, in fact, it's they who must then decide.
The council, not the traditional leader does not decide alone.
All right. Nolundi, what do you say?
It's the traditional leader in council.
Right. So if the traditional leader in council represents the community, then surely it is that body that then will decide what the form of the restitution should take.
I think, Dennis, the difficulty is that on the ground, the power relationships between traditional leaders and the community are very different to what the colleague in Joburg is describing. Firstly, we need to remember that customary law allowed for people to vote essentially with their feet. So this idea that a chief's following was only as large or as small as he was a just and fair ruler. If people felt that they were unfairly treated, they would move away. And so if they felt that another leader was potentially a better ruler, they would move to that traditional leader. So I think that point is important, to say that traditional systems and African customary law gives people a choice, as does our constitution. And so it's slightly worrying when my colleague in Joburg says that people are stuck with that system of leadership.
Well, he
and they
says
don't
it's
have a
because the
choice.
Constitution.
Secondly, I think that in reality,
the Constitution safeguards that.
As to how they want their land to be returned is again not to really acknowledge the power relationships on the ground. People are finding that there are traditional leaders, and not all traditional leaders, but there are some who abuse their power greatly. And so even if the community wanted to make a choice, they would find themselves barred or possibly even facing some very severe consequences for going against what the traditional leader and his traditional council would want. Bear in mind that 60% is democratically elected. So there again, you would find that potentially the majority may find themselves siding with the traditional leader, leaving the community voice slightly underrepresented.
Robert, but how do you, I mean, would you accept that there are some traditional leaders who would abuse their authority, and that to that extent, communities should be able to say, sorry, that's not the route we want to go?
Like in any society, there are bad apples. It's not all rosy. There may be few individuals who abuse their authority.
Well, the suggestion is more than a few.
It's an empirical question. I work with them on a daily basis. I've never seen them.
Are you saying to me that you can say to South Africa that by and large, that the traditional leaders don't have, as it were, enjoy an imbalance of authority, and that in those communal societies, there really is a sense of communal democracy?
There is. There is. I've observed, even trying cases, I've sat and listened how the system...
But what about those, for example, my understanding is that there are at least 34 CPAs where restitution awards, agreements were signed. That indicates to me that there are quite a few who choose to go that route. Are you prepared as a traditional leader to accept that?
Yes, as long as tenure reform says that people must have a choice of a tenure form that will best meet their needs. If a CPA is the route to go, they must go that route. If the traditional system is the other route, let it be so.
But what I'm trying to probe from you is how would the legislation should permit people to decide that for themselves? Or does the traditional leader and the House make that determination for the people?
No, the legislation must provide the framework so that people are able to...
I'll come back to that framework in a minute. I have to take a break first.
News that moves. ENCA.com.